Okay. Let me join. Okay. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're here for recitation. Yep.
Yeah, I'm Chin, so I'm new here. Do you mind if I stay for 10 minutes after class for you to maybe help me catch up a little bit?
Sure. Yeah, that sounds great.
Okay.
Welcome to recitation. Settle in. You're gonna pair with whoever is near you. What we do in class is we're gonna be going over a small test or a small quiz just to check that you've watched the recordings or all that. And I'm gonna pass that out now. Let me just real quick I don't know why everything is moving so slowly. Okay, follow the instructions there and would you help me pass this out, please? Just one per table. Okay, just follow the instructions there. It's attendance, and once you're done with attendance, go ahead and start on your comprehension check. Yes, so you scan that, and if you don't like scanning stuff, you can also just like Google poll everywhere. And then just put in my username, and if that's not clear, it's also right here.
Do I like sign in with my student account or?
Sign in, yeah, with your NYU. So just put in NXC 2000, or not your email, or NYU. Yeah. Sorry, that was loud. Alright, when you're doing your quizzes, try to do it by yourself and see how you do. We're gonna check it in just a little bit. Just try to do it on your own, test your own knowledge. Don't be Googling shit. It's like literally just to see what you know. And if you've done the videos.
It's not open book.
It's not open book, but you do get like a note card if you want. You can bring in a note card, you can write down your own notes. It's supposed to parallel the open note kind of way that it's going to be on the exams. It's not open internet, but it's open book. It's open notes. Yeah, it works. Yeah, pull everywhere. It should ask you to log in. You can use your NYU, please. So I'm gonna put it into the grade book, but it won't be weighted into your grade. Yeah. Thank you. type in your name.
My name.
Yeah.
It's all set, right? Like this. It's all set.
Yeah, if you're ready putting your name, then you're good.
Okay, thank you.
All right, please sit next to your partners. You can't talk to each other if you're across the room. Find each other. Please, I hope you guys remember each other. Yeah. Okay. We're going to ease into this year. We're going to ease into this semester. This is an example of a test that you can can expect every week. I do have a pen. See if you understand it. See if you would have gotten it right. Okay. So for the note card, I'm just gonna, like, literally, if you look up, like, note card, Amazon, like, it's just gonna be pretty small, and that's supposed to, like a 3x5 kind of thing. Yeah, they're like $1 if you buy like a small amount. If you buy like a $20,000 pack, then yeah. But yeah, those are note cards. Does this look like it would be easy for you guys? Would you have passed this next week? Hmm?
So for the exam, we could bring in like so it's like an open book. So it's like we could bring note cards.
We can, yeah, you'll bring in notes, yeah. And I think what he's betting on is that you can't shuffle through that material in that much time. And so you need to have a strong organizational system in place so you can scan through your notes and figure out where the answer is. Into the, yeah, but it's just going to be more information to like go through, you know? Think about how much time it takes to like scan through paper, okay? If you can like structure it out in your mind and you know where, like table of contents wise, and you know exactly where the answer would be in your notes, you're gonna get a higher score on the exam, okay? So it's strategic, you know? He's not saying bring the entire textbook and every assignment and everything that I've ever said in class. You could bring in transcripts for all he cares, but that's not gonna help you on the exam. Does that make sense? Okay, yeah.
I saw like the example on like the white space thing. Is that like the one updated for this year? Is that the same? Just like the same concept?
That was his last study guide, but up to the point that we are in the material so far. So that's what you can expect when he posts the exam study guide. So all that information you should know by now to be on par like up to date with this. I can show you what he's describing. This. He just lost that battle, and so it is online. And he decided it's short answer, and so you'll see on these quizzes, the first part of the question is framing it as if it were a short answer. You should be able to answer it as a short answer or as multiple choice anyway, because that's how it could be on the exam. So I would love if you were at that mastery level to be able to answer it short answer style. I find that those people just ace it easy. They get off 15 minutes early, they're fine. If you kind of require and depend on looking at the multiple choice, reading the answers, possibilities, then I would say you need to practice a little bit more. No, it's going to be, I think, he didn't decide yet. I asked him after class yesterday. He said it was like 50 multiple choice and maybe 10 short answer. Short answer has been pretty heavily weighted in the past. I remember the professor before him weighted 1% of the entire grade on each short answer on each exam. So I'm going to go over how to break down a short answer. That's what the previous classes usually struggle with the most. They think it's like self-evident if you just say, oh yeah, the answer is evolution, and then that's it. You have to explain what exactly about evolution. You have to give an example. So we're going to break down like term, definition, and example. But I just wanted to ease you guys into it. This is what you can expect on the exam, either multiple choice style or open response. And please sit near your partner so you guys can discuss and do stuff. So what would happen is I would give you guys like 15 minutes. You guys would go through all that test, and then we would regroup. I would ask you like all these questions, and it would look, actually wait, I think I have it to the side right here. Attendance, by the way, guys, if you haven't done it yet, that's the name. I would ask you for each question, if it loads, like, oh, we would go over the right answer. This is the correct answer for 1. Why is it the correct answer? Would you guys have gotten this right? And then I'll take a poll if your peer got it right or if your peer got it wrong. And whatever questions you guys missed the most on is what I'll be lecturing on for the rest of the time. There's like 10 different topics. There's 10 billion different topics that I could actually cover. So this is the way that I figure out what exactly you guys need. For now, though, I don't want to like quiz you guys straight out. That would be kind of mean. And also remember note cards. You guys can bring little note cards. But yeah, that's what you can expect. So you guys decide to do peer grading though, and I want to know what you think. If peer grading is not going to be like a real grade, like it's not going to be weighted in your final grade for recitation, how do you think it's going to be reinforced? Because in the past years, I've given out quizzes like this, and I've said, oh, okay, it's just practice, you know, it's just like we're chilling. And as a result, people turned it in blank. Do you think that peer grading, like having you guys talk to each other, figure it out together is enough? And you can also, like, this is an open dialogue. You can just shout random shit out. It doesn't have to be these 3. These are just, like, whatever I thought of at the moment. Like, in your perfect world, if you were a teacher, how would you reinforce quizzes? Graded and put into, like, weighted into the final recitation grade. Rather than what it is right now, where you guys are, like, grading each other. Okay. You can also propose whatever you want. Gonna give it 5 more seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay. All right. I'm done with that. That was just one of the options I chose, so yeah. I made up. We can have that. Okay. So you all agree with this?
Yeah.
If you guys feel like more than 3 times, I gotta say, hey, you good? Are you keeping up? Like, what's up? You're gonna meet up with me. Everyone knows the link. Does that feel good to everyone?
Yes.
Okay, slide. All right. Well, today we're just gonna be going over the first 2 or 3 lectures. We're not gonna get to the brain this time around because I'm covering like 3 different lectures. But we will be covering it next time. There will be an activity. For the brain day, I usually bring in tiny little brains made out of clay because I'm trying to do neuropsychology, so I do a shit ton of brain stuff. I'll also bring in my MRI, and we can look at that too. But yes, it's a very popular class. Okay, so let's get into it today. So, what do you need to memorize for the exam, and how are you going to organize it? Let's get to it. So, what I like to use is mnemonics. It's ridiculous. I know it doesn't make sense right now, but it might be your best friend on the day of the exam. I ran over a family of 4 with my Honda CR-V. The mnemonic here is I named other CR-V. Okay? Doesn't make any sense, but wait. It has already encoded a shit ton of information. So this is what you're going to need to know on the day of the exam. There's 5 foundations that he mentioned on day 1, okay? It's going to be like the very top of the study guide. That study guide that I posted on Brightspace is his previous year's study guide. That's what you're going to have, like, just a couple weeks from now. Okay, so the 5 foundations. And then plus dualism, which you just covered last class. So that's we're going to do parts of an experiment. Every single teacher seems to divide this down like differently. It's really bizarre, but okay, he chooses observation, theory, hypothesis, research. I'm down for that. That's fine. Another 5, okay? Okay. And that one right there is going to be a doozy because there's a lot of stuff encoded into that. And then lastly, the 3 problems of psych: complexity, reactivity, and variability. This should all sound kind of familiar. He covered question 1, or the 5 foundations, the first class, and then these 2 in the second class. Okay, so can anyone define like what's the difference between an observation and a theory?
Theory is like a hypothetical, and hypothesis is like a testable way to like see if that hypothetical is true.
Yeah. Okay, so now you're going way over. So from observation to theory, theory to hypothesis. If you're comparing these 2, you're right. Okay. So this is like a hypothetical. This is like, maybe it's this. A hypothesis has to be definable. Someone has to be able to take your hypothesis anywhere in the world, okay? Maybe you're working with a lab in China, okay? They need to be able to take your hypothesis and use it to do the same thing, okay? So, kind of going back a little bit though, we're still in observation. Observation is just, I'm gathering this data. Like, I'm not coming to any conclusions about it, okay? It's not an arguable point. So, for example, I'm a tutor, and I notice, oh shit, a lot of NYU freshmen that double up on sciences seem to be really depressed and like really sad and really upset and overwhelmed, and they want to drop out and all that shit. What's up with that? I'm like, that's weird data. So that's just like observational data. Anybody could do that. ChatGPT could take my mind stuff and like just spit it out, okay? It's not an arguable point. How an observation differs from a theory is that a theory is like, okay, it's arguing something, okay? It's an arguable point. It's an opinion. It's taking data and it's speculating. Oh, maybe when you double up on sciences, it like really ruins your like quality of life. Maybe it really ruins, it just makes you sad. How about that? Okay, so theory going down is arguable. And let's say I think that into equals that. Okay? Your theory is also going to contain your abstract concept. I know he mentions this separately. I want to group them together here for you. Okay? This abstract concept of, maybe it makes people sad. Sad is still pretty abstract, okay? Sad is like an emotion. Usually abstract concepts are emotion. I think that in class he said it was like ticklishness. Wasn't that his abstract concept? I was like, okay, yeah, that's pretty abstract. But to make this a true experiment, we have to be able to define it further. So let's take this more concretely. Now let's make it a hypothesis. If people double up on sciences, then this and this and this and this would happen, okay? So my argument is like, I've seen a lot of them get really depressed. I bet that their depression will increase. Maybe they'll listen to more emo music. Maybe their quality of life will be worse. These are all operational definitions, okay? You're taking your abstract concept and you're breaking it into categories almost, okay? Something that can be quantifiable, okay? So this is my hypothesis. Does anyone see anything wrong with it? Is there something a little interesting, a little strange? Okay, random. Okay, yeah, you can do a comparison. That's part of like the structure of an experiment. We can get into that later. I'm gonna say, is emo music a really good definition of depression? Like, bro, what? This is called like construct validity. Okay, so if I proposed this to maybe my research advisor, he would be like, bro, what the hell? Emo music, like people could be really happy and be listening to emo music. Maybe that's their jam. Maybe they're like a really exhilarated emo guy. You know, like what if that's just what they listen to when they're having a great day, skipping through the park? Like, you don't know that. You can't make that. And so he would say that the abstract concept does not relate to the operational definition. That's the example of construct validity. They're not equaling each other. Okay? There's not a good enough argument that one equals another. Okay? Does everyone feel good about construct validity? Because we're going to introduce a couple other types of validity as well. Good? Okay. Well, okay, I take it off. I'm like, all right, now I have my operational definitions. Now I gotta, like, do the thing. So I gather up a whole bunch of freshmen, and I'm like, 10 of you guys are gonna go do double sciences. I don't care if you like it or not, just do it. And then 10 of you guys here are gonna go over there and you just do single sciences. You're chill, like you're vibing, all right? Anyone see any problem with this? Thoughts? I'm gathering. Okay, I could say that better. I take like 10 random freshmen and I put them over there in this group. I take 10 other random freshmen and I put them over there. Just random sampling from the entire grade of freshmen. Okay. Good point. I can be clearer. Yes.
Unethical.
Yes. It's kind of like, I'm predicting that this is gonna cause depression, and I'm still forcing them to do it. Like, even if they don't want to, like, even like, bro, that would be bad. Like, if I proposed this, the IRB would be like, what the fuck? You can't do anything like that. In fact, they have like really strict rules. I think that, I remember I was in a lab, and the closest they could get to simulating depression was strapping people to a chair and spinning them around for like 10 minutes. And it was supposed to represent, like the dizziness was supposed to represent like disorientation, confusion, and sadness. And I was like, seriously, that's the closest you're getting to depression? But this is the IRB, okay? This is what happens when you do research. You gotta deal with this shit all the time, okay? So I'm like, okay, fine. If I can't do that, then what if I just let ed drop happen? They already choose on their own. I'm not forcing them at gunpoint. They're just vibing. They're choosing it on their own. And then I like go to Sona and I'm like, hey, y'all, if you guys are doubling up on sciences, join my study. And then I gather them that way. What's the problem with this now? They're pre-made groups. They chose themselves. There could be other variables here. Maybe the people who are doubling up on sciences are already super hardcore, have a billion other things going on. Like maybe their parents are forcing them to, and they have like strained relationships with their parents, and that could be also causing depression. You don't know that. Because it's not random assignment, that like kind of ruins causation, you know. For causation to truly happen, for me to say, oh, I know for sure that these like doubling up on sciences will cause depression and worse quality of life, I have to randomly sample and randomly like distribute into the groups. If they choose it themselves, then it could be biased. Say, for example, I want to see, what the population thinks about Trump, but I only sample from Reddit and QAnon groups and like strange internet sections, you know. It has to be random. Like everybody has an equal chance of being selected. You could argue that it's affected by a different variable. Like maybe the people on Reddit are already kind of funky, you know? Like if you're selecting just from that, it could ruin the entire experiment. These are all things you have to think about if you're ever going to go into research, if you're ever just going to think scientifically. You can never say that there is causation without random assignment, okay? You feeling good about that? Now, after abstract concept, operational definition, the last thing is measure. All right? It's not enough to just say, oh, depression. That's it. How much depression? How are you going to quantify depression? Okay? I decided, okay, that depression test. It's been tried a billion times. They know that it's reliable. Everybody loves the test. I'm going to use it to quantify depression. The higher the score, the more depressed they are. And the quality of life scale. Let's just imagine somebody already has a survey for that. So at the end of the semester, I make them take the test. I get the data back, and that's how I do an experiment. Okay? But there's two things you need to know about the measure. Discriminative validity and reliability. Does anyone know the difference between validity and reliability?
Reliability is when it is consistent and you create it, and validity is more like it is not.
Yeah. Okay. I like that. Yeah. So she says that reliability is more about like its consistency, I think is what you're getting at. And then validity is more of how close it is to actually what you're measuring, you know. Like, for example, we look back on emo music. It was not really valid. It had terrible construct validity. Reliability, I like to think about it as a measure in time. For example, I have a scale that I'm really attached to. It's gone through like 4 different New York moves with me, from like Chinatown to Lower East Side, Third North. Like it's gone through everything with me. But it sucks. Like that scale always says that I'm 20 pounds lighter than I always am. But it does that every time. So I can still kind of use it, you know? I just like know that about the scale. It's always consistent. So I can say that that scale is technically reliable. Does that make sense? Because it gives me the same kind of issue every time. Is it valid though? No. Validity is about how close it is to what you actually want to measure. And a scale that's like giving you wrong info, you know, is not valid, but it is reliable. See how it can kind of differ from this to that? Okay. He likes to do comparisons, so I feel like this might be one. I think if he was truly evil, what you guys can expect is like a short answer, but you have to make the experiment. And then so you have to do like your own abstract concept, operational definition, and measure, and figure out how it's construct validity, how it's discriminative validity, how it's convergent validity, all of that. And then also the bias stuff. So see if you can do that at home. If you can, then you're vibing. If you can go through all these steps, then you're vibing. If you can't, then rewatch this video when you get home, rewatch his videos, and also come to me. My office hours are from like 9 to 12 today. But yeah, anyone have questions about that? Oh, I also included another example of something that's neither reliable nor valid. My mother, she just randomly will comment anything. It's sometimes like, oh, you need to eat more, you need to put on more weight, or oh, you need to lose more weight. But it's different every time, so it's not really reliable. You know, it's not like my very nice old scale that is kind of terrible, but I still love it. And it's not really valid because I have not changed weight in like the last 3 years, so I don't know what she's on about. Anyways, think about it that way. Yeah, so this is all that we covered. If you can write this out, then you're golden. I know some people like visuals. These are the steps. We got other, and then from other, we can figure out our main three. Convergent validity, I kind of didn't touch on. Convergent validity essentially means that your operational definitions have to line up with each other, okay? They have to relate to each other. I can't have like one operational definition being about depression and then the other one about emo music, you know? They could not relate to each other. Or quality of life and emo music, that doesn't really relate to each other. So convergent validity is about how well they go together. Does that make sense? It's all about making your experiment better. If you have random ass requirements and they're not relating to each other, that's not a good experiment. Something's not valid about that, you know? If I had like, oh, one of my operational definitions is that they start to really love the color blue, and it means they're depressed. That's not a good construct validity because I'm not measuring my abstract concept well. Maybe they just really like blue. Maybe it's light blue. Maybe it's like a joyful blue. And it doesn't really relate to each other. It doesn't really relate to quality of life, for example. There's not a correlation there. Does that make sense? Everyone feel that? Feel that? Okay. And the measure we just went over. And just like that, we're done with one of them. Okay, any questions on that? Because I went over that kind of quickly. No? Okay. And this isn't in words because I know some people just really love words. They like copying things down from slides. It's a way to do it. Repetition is key. Also, I always recommend if you really want to study, take my slides and see if you can teach the material. And if you can, then you're good. I don't have to worry about you. And also, this is the picture that he has from his whole lecture. I like to put it there so people know that I'm not just pulling this out of my ass. Yeah. Okay. And last year, a lot of people really liked charts. The main reason why they like charts is because, by the way, if you don't know where this is, it's in the notes. We all have collective notes for those newcomers here. You sign up for a slot, and everyone goes and puts in their lecture notes. For example, an amazing example is lecture 2. I think done by Elizabeth Yang, Queen. She gave all the notes on evolution. Look at this. Naturalistic fallacy, deterministic fallacy, nature versus nurture. We're going to go over that if we have time today. And also, she did this for you guys. She did the reading, and she answered the questions. By the way, you guys have readings in case you forgot. And if you need reminders, join the Google Calendar, and it will remind you for me. Yeah, check that out. And yes, the second note taker as well. Look at that. Go Clover. Okay, so you guys have all the materials you need to succeed. I do not recommend printing all of this out the day of the exam and being like, okay, make this your own, okay? Know how it's organized. Know how, like, have a table of contents in your brain and you can go through it the day of. Because if you're just printing this out for the first time and you're reading it for the first time, I guarantee you, all that you're going to do on the exam is just reading and not answering. But back to it. Yeah, charts. Last year, people really liked charts because they could delete that information and then type it out themselves and see if they could, like, you know, quiz themselves. And I thought that was pretty cool. It's also just a framework for memorizing. Okay, going on. Charts exist, yes. We kind of talked about this, the need to collect and do random sampling. if you don't have that, then really what you're doing is like a quasi-experimental observational study, okay? This is the other kind of study. The reading talks a little bit more in depth about this, but it is something that you should know. For example, if I wanted to study cancer, I couldn't just gather random sample of this, random sample of that, and then give one group cancer, you know, because IRB. So they have to already have cancer, and I have to nonchalantly be like, oh, you have cancer. Do you want to join my study? And then, yes, that's how you get an observational study. There's no random assignment. They already have it, okay? So I'm not just like, nobody has an equal opportunity of being chosen because they're not chosen. They just already exist. And there are confounding variables because of that. Maybe they're all like really aggressive smokers, you know? And I can't really take that out as a confounding variable, you know? I can't control for that. It's correlational. Like I can see, oh, maybe when they have cancer, they get more sad. But I can't be like, they cause each other. When you get cancer, you are going to get sad. Because it could be, again, a confounding variable. Or what he calls the third variable, I think. And yeah. But all of those observational studies is what can lead to experimental studies. Maybe if more depressed people consistently get more depressed in those observational studies, I don't know if they will ever actually give people cancer, but they might give monkeys cancer and see what it does, and that will lead to experimental studies. So it's kind of like one leads to the other, because you gotta have like a really good reason to get funding for experimental. Do we know the difference between independent and dependent variable? If not, I can also go over it. I'll go over it later then. Yeah. Any questions about this? This graph is on the lecture notes if you need it. Okay. Difference between independent variable and dependent variable. So, in a controlled experiment, let's say, I think this was actually based off one of my POB labs where we had to grow plants. It was like a whole botany class. It was kind of weird. And we had to shine red light on one plant and then shine regular light on the other plant and see how they grow, okay? So in that experiment, what we're changing is not the plant height, it's not the water, it's not the soil, it's not the temperature. We're changing the light color, okay? The independent variable is what you're manipulating. We were manipulating the light color, and then the dependent variable is what's the result of that. Kind of like cause and effect almost, if you want to think about it that way. So because we changed the light color, it led to a difference in plant height maybe. Maybe one plant like absorbed more red light and the other one just did not. One causes the other-ish. I like to think about it. I like to think about it temporally. What came first? Was it the plant height or was it the light color? You can think about it that way too. And then, of course, the other thing that is very necessary for experimental design is control variables. Imagine, oh my God, I really want the plants that have regular light to grow super strong, so I give them extra fertilizer, and I give them a shit ton of water, and I make sure that the temperature is perfect for them, and I wrap them in a little blanket, and they're so happy, blah, blah, blah. No, that doesn't make for a good experiment. You need everything else to be exactly the same. And it's excruciating. We had to put them in their own little plant container and make sure they had the same moisture even. It was insane. Okay, so all these control variables, what they're trying to do is take away those confounding variables. Think about it this way. When you post a study, your entire community is going to be on that study trying to eat you. Okay, they're going to be like, well, actually, you didn't control for like the plant possibly having depression. Did you control for that? You have to be able to defend yourself. So you have to make sure you have at least the environment constant, okay? Have like the environment, other factors, everything you can possibly think of constant. Does that make sense? Cool. Okay, he also talked about random sampling, samples of convenience, random assignment, experimental group, and also the difference between population and sample. I just wanted to show it in this visual in case it's better for people. Sometimes sketching it out really helps. hmm For example, this will come up later, but I'm just going to hint at it now. We don't really have true random sampling from all over the world. Like if I wanted to gather people and say like, oh, POB1 and Gen Chem like really fucks people up. It's not really random sampling, you know. It's a sample of convenience. They're all at NYU. That could bias it as well. You gotta think about that as well. But moving on, there is a selection bias. I kind of covered this already, and he kind of didn't cover it as much either. You can also think about it this way. For some reason, a lot of people struggled with this last year, so I have a lot of graphs on this. Like the control variables are supposed to like take out the confounding variables. Random selection, taking it from random parts of the like random population. It's so you don't have, you know, the QAnon issue or a Reddit issue. Random assignment, so I'm not like, oh, everybody who's already freaking depressed, you go in the depressed group or the double science group, you know. I gotta make sure that I'm not like trying to like manipulate my own study. And the law of large numbers, I don't think he covered this, did he? It might just be a general experimental thing that I would like you guys to know. But if you have a large enough sample group, it like kind of takes care of confounding variables a little bit. The bigger the sample or people in your study, the less likely you're gonna have like serious confounding variables. Think about it this way: if I had like the study done, but I only had like 2 people in my study, it is more likely that there would be a confounding variable than if I had like every single undergrad in the entire world in my study. You know, it's less likely to have like issues, confounding variables. This is it in words for people who like to study or copy or just really want a clear definition. I post my slides on the website. I hope everyone knows how to access the website. I'm going to do it again because everyone always forgets every single year that there is a website. I'm just going to go real quick to this. This is how you access everything. It is on Brightspace, and then you just go and you click this, and it takes you to like the previous, if it loads, there it goes, the previous lecture and the previous slides. So for people who really like to just copy shit, like here it is. Here it is for you. I didn't want to exclude you from the conversation. Okay, please load. Thank you. Yes. Oh, yeah, I also had examples and then definitions because I really think term, definition, and example is key to getting full points on those short answers. Okay, so we've already talked about this a little bit, how experimental design needs causation. One thing that is a tricky point that some people struggle with is that causation can mean correlation. Maybe I do find that doubling up on sciences causes people to be depressed. Okay, so maybe this is their mood. This is a correlation. This counts as a correlation. But I can't say that correlation is causation. Okay, because think about all the spurious correlations that you guys had to research. That does not equal causation. So you see how it goes one way, but not the other way? A way to think about it is how a square can be a rectangle, but a rectangle can't be a square. So if you ever have issue, try drawing it out. A square can be a rectangle cannot be a square. That's how I like to think about it that way too. Okay, and please, I had like 1/4 of the entire class last semester still said that correlation equaled causation, and I don't know why. I really hope that you guys don't do this on the exam, but just please don't do that. That would make me devastatingly sad. So please, no. I think I'm still good. He talked about positive correlation, negative correlation, and no correlation. It's very much like this. For example, if maybe I have like some happy pill, and I'm like, okay, the more happy pills I take, maybe Prozac, maybe, I don't even know, Zoloft, I just get like continuously more happy. Woo. Or it could be like, oh, maybe I'm taking feel shitty pills. Maybe I'm taking antibiotics. Every time I take antibiotics, I like end up like sicker than I actually am. So like more antibiotics I take, like doxycycline, I'm like throwing up all the time. I'm always in bed. That's a negative correlation. Okay? And no correlation is maybe someone gave me sugar pills, and I'm just like, oh, I'm like exactly the same. Yeah, no correlation. That feel good. This is like pretty. Like try drawing it out if you're having issues with it. But like essentially, if one variable increases and the other one increases, then you got a positive. If one increases and the other decreases, got a negative. If there's like literally nothing going on, like no, there's no correlation. Yeah, this is it in words. Okay. And he talked a lot about bias. Does anyone remember the Clever Hans experiment? Yes. You're carrying the class right now. She's the only reason why I'm not randomly calling on y'all, okay? Everybody thank her right now because she's saving you from me just pulling names out of a hat, okay? Go on.
It was the experiment where a horse trainer believed that he had taught his horse to do math because he would ask the horse a question, and then the horse would like keep tapping his foot like to how many numbers that the answer was. But the trainer unintentionally was like not training him to do math. It was more so like the trainer would smile every time the horse stopped tapping his foot, so the horse learned to stop whenever he smiled and like the impression he gave it correctness.
You would have passed like I think last year's second comp check, so slay for that. Essentially, that is an example of how the observer can bias an experiment. Maybe you want it just so badly that it kind of influences it. For example, okay, you have a subject and you have an observer. Maybe I'm the observer and I'm like, bro, this is it. I'm running out of funding. I really need my experiment to work. And so I'm unconsciously maybe projecting a certain desperation that they pick up on. It also happens with p-values. I can talk about that in a sec. Maybe the subject picks up on that and they pick up on this like sense of desperation. They're like, oh shit, this guy looks like he needs something. I'm gonna give him something. That is an example of a demand characteristic, okay? Like even if I'm not saying anything out loud, maybe I just like look like this and I'm like, please let this work. That's still a demand characteristic, okay? And it's still gonna influence your experiment because no, they're not reacting to what would just normally be happening. Maybe I'm just like, please have depression, and so they up their own depression scores, So a way to combat that is you could keep the subject blind to the experiment, and there's a couple ways to do this. You could lie to them. I could be like, oh, actually, I'm just trying to see what like science does for the community and like the well-being of the community and that type shit. Or a really good example of like a single blind experiment is the shock experiment, where they were like, okay, we are going to see how people learn, and we're going to have like one group shock this other group if they don't get the right answer, and you just have to keep asking them like math questions or something. And so like that one group was like, okay, what's 1 + 1? And maybe they got it wrong, and then they got shocked. What they didn't know is that the person getting shocked was just an actor, okay? And the real experiment at hand was just like the experimenter seeing how high someone would turn up the voltage on the people learning. So it was actually a test on obedience, okay? They were trying to see like, oh, how far will people go? This is right after Nazi Germany, so they were like, is this true nature, But the people who were doing the, shocking were under like this lie that they were just trying to teach people how to learn. Okay, so that's an example of a single blind experiment. You could also remove bias by just having it be both. Maybe you have your hypothesis, you have your whole experiment. Maybe you're testing a drug, for example, happy pills. and I really, really want my happy pill to work. And maybe my advisor knows this, so he takes it on, and he's like, I'm going to shuffle it so you don't even know which one's the real pill and which one's the placebo pill. Okay, you just give them the meds. That's all you do. I'm like, shit, I don't know which one I'm supposed to be rooting for, because it could be, like, placebo could be the real one, so I'm blind to it. Does that make sense? And then the other person doesn't know either, because, they're just taking pills, and so we're all just blind. But then there's no bias, because I'm just acting generally desperate and not specifically desperate. Good? Okay. So yeah, think about those and consider the graph. One way to combat this as well is that the body doesn't lie. You know those crazy spy movies where they hook you up to all sorts of shit and they're like, okay, we're going to figure out if you're like truly lying or not. That kind of works. Okay, there's something called a skin conductance reaction test. They can do EEGs, they can do pupil size. For example, this is like a stupid example, but I watched Maniac on Netflix like 2 days ago, and I was like, shit, that's crazy. That's pupillometry. It's a whole thing, pupillometry. This is it here. They will see how much you sweat, but like on a minuscule level. That doesn't lie, okay? So even if they really want you to do this, or they really want you to do that, or you're trying to hide your own reaction, like, your body won't lie. So that's another way you can avoid bias. There's a lot of ways you can kind of trick the body and trick the people. But yeah, for the people who also like words, I guess I can also cover anonymity. That's another way to get rid of subject bias. Example of that. Say I wanted to see how common cheating was at NYU. The answers would be really different if I just had this as a regular SOMA poll and it was anonymous versus me right now asking, hey, did you cheat on the last exam? What about you? Did you cheat on the last exam? Your answers would be very different, okay? So, yeah, think about that. So subject bias, the way subject bias, you are under demand characteristics, and a way to combat that is anonymity or single blind studies, okay? I also have a chart for this. This is also just really funny. I wanted to include this because it's hilarious. There's something called the IG Nobel Prize, and it's basically for like the stupidest things in science, and one of the winners was that one study found that painful placebos worked better than like non-painful placebos. So if you gave people a little bit of pain, then they thought they had the real medicine, and they were like, oh my god, this is crazy, I feel amazing, when really it's just like, I don't even know what caused them pain, actually. Maybe it was antibiotics. But yeah, think about that. That was pretty crazy. The human mind, guys. We already did that? Okay, now the 5 foundations of psychological science. He kind of covered this really quickly. This was the first one. So I like to start this out because it's kind of hard for people. It's a little bit of a philosophy thing about how we make consciousness. Has anyone watched like The Matrix? I'm in like Gallatin, so I had to take like this class called Philosophy of Film, and we just like contemplated if we were a brain in a vat for like 2 hours straight. But like essentially, some people argue that hey, like all that consciousness is just neural reactions happening in your brain. You could be a brain in a vat, you know? People could have like random stuff plugged into your brain right now, just simulating those electrical responses, and that's your reality. That's your consciousness. There's no way to disprove that. And then other people are like, no, like your perception is what shapes your reality. You know, think optical illusions. In his lecture, I think he gave the example of the dress. Yes. The dress. And you see how that is perception shaping reality? I think that it's like blue and gold. So, I don't know. That's weird. This comes into question when we talk about the difference between idealism and materialism, okay? Materialism is the one that's like your brains make the mind. Your brains are those neural reactions happening and making your mind. they are interconnected, okay? Idealism is the one that's like, oh, it's the dress, like optical illusions, you know, like your perception is what shapes reality. So yeah, know the difference between those. I know that a lot of people struggle with them, so I made a chart. For example, he wants you to know the catchphrases, so do know that you should know that, or be able to find it very quickly in your notes. You should know the difference in case he asks conceptual questions, like what is reality for materialism? Oh, it's physiological. What is reality for idealism? Oh, it's just a construction in your mind. And then also, because he started talking about dualism, materialism says that mind and the body are the same thing. Idealism says that the mind and body are separate. Idealism is also that the mind and body are separate, but they like connected the pineal gland, I think. That was like yesterday's lecture or something. I have to go for my notes for that. Okay, so that's idealism and materialism. That's the first part of I Me. We also have evolution. Evolution, we covered a lot. I'm not going to cover it too hard in this one, but I will cover it in the next replication. He talks about adaptation. He talks about all the little cycles. We'll go into it further. I think the biggest thing to take away from it, what is really easy to quiz on, are the 4 fallacies that you can fall into. Okay? Does that ring a bell for anybody? Can anyone tell me a fallacy? Because I'm sick of my own voice right now, and I'm also losing it. Anyone? A single fallacy.
Naturalistic fallacy, so things are right because they are natural. That's not actually not right.
Yeah, naturalistic fallacies like, oh, like, you know, maybe men just have more testosterone, so they're more aggressive, and that's just it, you know. Like, that's good, you know. Naturalistic fallacy, that's one of them. Great job. 10 out of 10. Anyone else? Deterministic, that's the other one. And like there's a sense of inherentness to it as well. Like, oh, because we are violent creatures in our genealogy, or that's just our nature. Like that's all that would be. Like our future is determined by that. Okay, yes. Teleology? Am I saying that? Teleology. I want to say teleology. I could be completely wrong, but it's not going to be on the exam, so. Or I mean, saying it won't, but yes, indeed.
It's like technology is gonna make people better, but it was like a picture of like it's like the person who's on the computer.
That we're always. Yeah, that's exactly it. We're this illusion that we're constantly going towards a better future because we have more and more technology. And the last one.
Nature versus nurture.
And what about that?
He said that like they're intertwined. It's not like they're up against each other. He used like the example like we have the capacity for like nature to like acquire language, and then depending on like where you're born or like your culture, that determines what language you learn, which is like the nurture.
Yeah. People are always arguing that it's one or the other. Like it's all nature. Like that's all we'll ever be, or that's the only thing that's good, or nurture. A lot of developmental psychologists are on that side. But it's both. We are made of both our parents and that the genes that we gave us. Maybe I have my father's humor and my mother's terrible cooking skill, but I also can go to cooking class, and that is nurture, you know. Just because we were born one way does not mean that that is all we have to be. Okay. Great job, you guys. That's the 4. Speeding through this. The last one, or no, there's 2 more. It's modularity. We're going to cover that more in the brain lecture next class. Get hyped for the brain lecture. I really love the brain lecture. I'm going to bring in tiny mini brains for y'all. because people had issues like memorizing the lobes last year, and I think it's because they couldn't like hold it in their hands and like rotate it. They couldn't see it in their minds. But yeah, I'm going to talk about that more. All it's basically saying is that your brain has a bunch of little parts. You know, it's not just one big sponge, and you can't just lop off one part like a lobotomy and be like, okay, it's about the same. You know, we saw with Phineas Gage, like you can live without your like prefrontal cortex area, but if you lose like let's say like the very base of your brain, like your hindbrain, like maybe at your neck, you're you're done. Like if he was mining away and that shot from behind then skewered him, even if it was just like a tiny bit and not like a teacup size, he would have died. So obviously the brain has a bunch of different parts and they're not all equal. We will learn about that more next week. What's the last one? Anyone? We covered idealism, materialism, evolution, modularity. One more. Yes. And it is essentially, he talked about this a lot in the beginning when he was going over experimental design. It's like what you like what you're observing has to be quantifiable. It's all about counting. That's really the only thing that I think about. If the question has anything about quantifying and counting and whatever, the answer is empiricism. Okay? Just think about that. And all of the experiments are supposed to be empirical. That's why we have that measure, and that's why that measure has to pass through so many hoops, like discriminant validity and reliability. It's because of empiricism. We have to be able to, prove it rather than just say like, oh, I believe that depression will happen if I give like 2 sciences to that person. But yeah. I also used to make memes. I guess I can upload those. Yeah, I'll put them in a thing. But this is a graph. The whole thing is on the notes. And people liked filling this out last year, so yeah. Think about that. Know the catchphrase. Know that this is out of order, actually. I know brains make minds. Minds make reality. All those little catchphrases. Know those, and then the key terms related to each. Now we're going to go over the 3 special problems. Before I do that, anybody have questions about the 5 psychological sciences? If I were to give this exact same quiz next week, would you guys be okay with it? If not, you can rewatch this video. Okay, so we're going to go over complexity. Essentially, the brain is really, really complex. That's just supposed to say term. It has 1 billion neurons in there, and every single neuron is actually coded in a different way to connect to a different neuron in a different little community, and that's what makes it really hard to do psychological science. Okay, like for example, maybe in chemistry, we know like carbon can only break down so far unless you get into quantum physics, but like let's just say carbon breaks down into that. If you add it up to this amount, it's going to equal like this element. The brain is different. The brain is trickier. There's a lot of variability. There's complexity to it. It's not always the same, and it's insanely intricate. For example, they found that there's a Jennifer Aniston neuron, a single neuron in your brain that will light up when looking at pictures of Jennifer Aniston. Okay, your brain is insanely intricate to the point that I don't even know like how to compare it to any other like science out there. If you have just one for Jennifer Aniston, you have one for like everybody in your life. That's a shit ton of neurons just associated to like faces alone. So yeah, it's really hard because it's just insanely complex. They're trying to do it though. This is a bunch of, this was a picture from POB 1 and how they were trying to map the genome. It's rough though. It's not cute. Particularly about tobacco use, I think, and substance abuse. Secondly, variability. We talked a little bit about this with the weird bias. Anybody know what weird stands for? gonna start random columns. Yes.
I'm not so sure, but white, the first one is the white, educated, the fourth one's rich,
Industrialized.
industrialized, and I forgot the last one.
Democratic. Good job. Here I have it here. Western, educated, industrialized, rich, and democratic. Western, not white. But yeah, there tends to be a white skewed balance in like all research, not just psychological research. Like for example, I think only recently they found that Ambien works differently for women compared to men because all they had been using were white men in the study. And they found that with women, they need like triple the dose or some shit, especially when like PMSing. Like it was really bizarre. And they only just recently figured this out because, you know, it's just white men. That was the sample size. But Western. This tends to be like the sample size, and so it obviously can't represent the entire population of Earth. And what I really like to talk about when it comes to variability is just like Three Identical Strangers. Has anyone watched this movie? It's kind of insane. They're all like, they have the exact same genome because they're identical. They have the exact same genes, but they all ended up in like very different places. So this is another kind of unethical study. What happened is that a mother gave up her 3 children or 3 triplets for adoption. And what scientists did is they took one triplet and they put them in a low-income family, another triplet and put them in a middle-income family, and then another triplet and put them in a high-income family. They separated them at birth. It's like that TV show. And the tolls that they went through in their entire life story, like, drastically changed from that. And then later in life, when they were like 40, they were like at a college party and they found that like their friends were like, oh wait, you look exactly like this other dude. And then they found out that they had a triplet, that they were just separated at birth, which is crazy. So if any of you are adopted, figure that out soon. But what this shows is that even when you have the same genome, there's still insane variability in how you end up and how you react to the fact that you were separated at birth. For example, one of them was really upset, but got used to it, talked it out with his like really core family. He had a really good family to fall back on. The other one, traumatic family, kind of I think abusive family, and ended up killing himself. So variability, guys. Even if you have the same genome, like it changes. Your life changes just from like everything that happens in your life. So think about that when you're like gathering your random samples, you know. Even though you might be gathering, let's just say, like women in undergrad, you're still gonna vary a lot. Yeah. Another example is reactivity. Reactivity is kind of like, let me think. If I am doing a titration, I know that the titration is not going to be like, I'm going to play a trick on this person. I'm just going to turn purple whenever I feel like it. But humans do that. Humans do that all the time. I remember when I was little, I used to do like tiny little experiments on my brother. Not terrifying, but just like how would he react. And he figured this out, that I would be taking notes on him. And so he started like doing the exact opposite of whatever the fuck I was trying to predict. And I figured it out that he knew, and then it was just like she knew, he knew, blah, 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 blah. But that's the thing about humans, is that they could always psych you out, figure you out, and that makes them a really difficult subject to try to study. We already talked about all the different biases. We can talk further about Hawthorne. I think he did a really good job of it. If you want, NYU actually has resources where you can see all the psychological experiments ever done. I will post that on Brightspace. They have one on the Hawthorne experiments too, so you can see what happened. And placebo, I already talked about sugar pills. If this is still confusing to you, CRV, you can look at the charts. And yeah, I just wanted to ask what is unclear so far, if anything is. And then I wanted to give you guys 10 minutes to talk to each other, talk through it with your partner, talk through basically the study guide, and if not the study guide, then like the comp check too, and figure out what you guys are going to do to study for the next one, or just like the first exam, like all the material that we've covered so far. So let's break for 10 minutes, if there aren't any questions. Yeah. Are you in a group right now? No. Okay, why don't you guys, are you in a group right now? What happened to your homie? I feel like you had a group before. Yeah, I did. If you can't find her, join one. If you guys are like lost in your group or you don't have a group, yeah, join one behind or around. Yeah, no, this is an example. Yeah, you can expect that. Yeah. I mean, yeah, usually discussing what it's like for you, right? Yeah, how you guys do the next one. Yeah. And I can put up the list. Actually, I have it right here.
Yeah, and then conscious.
Yeah, we haven't learned this part yet.
Like, I was like, it's too
Okay.
Is the first exam, is that just like the first? Or how many?
The first exam is just going to be everything that's been covered so far.
Oh, okay.
Like everything. This right here is just what we have covered. Like the last, we've only gotten through 4, you know. And we have the exam in like what, 2 or 3 weeks?
Yeah.
2 weeks?
When we come back from
Yeah. So it's going to be up to that.
Okay.
Yeah. I just wanted to also provide this for you in case you wanted to study in advance, because he covered a lot. He actually covered a lot looking at it now.
Yeah, actually, I like that one better here. This one. Hi.
Mhm.
For the sign up sheet, I think there's not enough like the time slot for me. So can I?
Let me check that.
My partner.
Let me see.
Yeah.
Also, anyone who's still having bright space problems, like come up here and sign your name on here, and I'll talk to administration about it. And like they can't see the bright space. Some of them can't see the bright space still. And if you are still having issues with that, or informally switched, put your name down. Start there. And then let me do that. Let me find the sheet real quick. Why is it? Okay.
Hey, where should I put my name down?
Sorry. Okay. Sorry, my computer's taking freaking forever. Hello.
I just missed the attendance, like poll everywhere.
Okay, no worries. If you go to that, I can put it back up
Yeah, I'm
real
off right
quick. Okay. Just one sec. I don't know why my computer is literally broken.
Is this for the
Yeah, just put your name
bright
down and
space?
then I can talk to administration. They're taking kind of long because everybody's freaking switching around. I just need to remind them. And let me go back to attendance.
It's okay. I got.
Okay. Let me see.
Yeah.
Okay. That works.
So what people
And so
started?
like they sign
Yeah,
like
some
two
people
people
just.
for one slot.
Yeah. If you don't have an extra, if you don't have any, then I would just recommend signing up for like doubling up on it, and then you can just add.
Because I saw that other thing.
I still want you guys to have separate ones, so just if that's the case, just add an extra little tab here.
Okay.
Like you can just do.
For someone like no ticket tree.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
Okay. Let me put up. Pull. Okay. Activate.
I'm assuming I can use my nickname since I'm putting my last name.
Yeah, if you logged in with, it should ask you to register, and so that's how I gathered the information.
Oh yeah, I am already registered.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Of course. Any other questions? All right, sum up with your group, and then you are free to go. It is time.
I'm supposed to meet you on today at 7:30. Can we do it on Zoom?
Yes, let me check that right now. You're supposed to meet with me today at 7:30?
7:30.
Okay, Calendry didn't put you in.
Oh really?
Let me check that right now.
Okay.
Why is my computer taking forever?
Oh.